If it isn't fat, stinking Billy Bob Billy Boy in Poison.
A story that's never far from controversy, making its stage debut in Singapore. John O'Davies stars as protagonist and ultra-violence-obsessed Alex Delage, who undergoes an extreme form of aversion therapy as part of his rehabilitation, rendering him incapable of violence or even self-defense. When you read the book, people often have a sense of sympathy for Alex. How do you bring that to your performance?
I think you make him as likeable as possible. He's doing all these horrible things, but you kind of want to be his mate a little bit, especially at the beginning. As I say, through the music, that helps. That helps you like him. But also, you realise that he is doing this because he doesn't think he's a villain. He's a psychopath. Nothing about him makes him think, he doesn't think he's doing wrong. So he thinks he's actually being the hero. And so you actually see someone being punished for what they think they're doing right. And I think a lot of people can relate to that.
You Alexander the Bolshevik, then? We governated not before a leader.
No.
It was all for one before and all Droogs together. Right. Right! Very much right!
Power and control are key themes throughout, whether it be that of Alex's over his gang or the state's over his free will.
I think it shows, in both aspects, that mankind will prevail, whether it takes a day, a month, a few years. There's a way to snap out of that control. Alex does through the torture. And the Droogs, in the end, they have enough of him trying to be so overbearing, and they turn him in. They're the ones that get him into jail, essentially. And so, all that pressure that you get from control, there's got to be release.
Stanley Kubrick's cinematic version of A Clockwork Orange was banned here for 3 decades until 2011, when it was screened at the Perspectives Film Festival. But it's a story that still provokes unease, and this version, officially titled Action to the Words, A Clockwork Orange, was subject to scrutiny also by authorities before it was allowed to arrive on stage here in the city-state. The snippets that had to be removed or modified in themselves raise questions over what societies regard as disturbing behaviour.
We weren't asked to address older women being beaten over the head with statues to death, or, for example, a man kicked to within an inch of his life for no reason, and I found that really confusing, if I'm honest. But the full impact of the show hasn't been tampered with, and I experimented with that by playing the Singapore version in London last week when we did our preview, and it's still impacting, incredibly so. In fact, in many ways, by not having those very obvious physical moments, what I've replaced it with, I think, is more subversive and stranger, and has given the show a new flavour entirely.
Burgess's dystopian society is in many ways in stark contrast with Singapore. How do you think people here will view this production?
I mean, I have to say, I don't read the novel as a dystopian novel as such. I try to keep things very real and very sort of clear in my head. In the version of our production, it's set in Salford, very real story. It's told in a stylised way, of course, which is where I feel you get the sort of nod to dystopia, you know. But in the book, certainly, he's a very real boy from a very real place. It's only when sci-fi comes into it through the Ludovico technique that it takes a turn for the more dystopian, you know. Actually, I think it's sort of transcendent of time, transcendent of culture, transcendent of place. I think the story was very deliberately written by Anthony Burgess without a time on it, as opposed to the film, which feels very of its time now, I think. And I think in any society you're going to find a disaffected youth. You're going to find an older generation blaming a younger generation for what they've done. And so I think it's going to be slap bang relevant, if I'm honest. I don't find the two societies so opposed at all.